So if you care, you just look up who's my representative, call the number and say, hey, don't sell the boundary waters. And we have lots and lots of action resources. So we're at savetheboundarywaters.org. Our partner organization, Sportsmen for the Boundary Waters, also has tons of resources. They make it super easy to send a message to Congress. If you have buddies you like to hunt and fish and camp with, if you go to the boundary waters with people, like, spread the word that the boundary waters is at risk and that people are actively trying to destroy it by building a massive copper mine on its doorstep. Because that's the thing, is like, grassroots power is super significant, and we just need to make sure that people are aware of it. Because I think a lot of people care. A lot of people care about the outdoors. A lot of people care about the boundary waters, and they have no idea what's going on.
Welcome to Wildlife Outdoors with your host, Russell and Jose. If you have a passion for conservation of the outdoors, or you're enjoying a calming hike in the mountains, an exhilarating kayak trip on the river, feeling a fish on the end of your line, cooking on an open flame in a primitive campsite, or stalking big game, just waiting for the perfect shot, you're in the right place. So put on your boots and polarized sunglasses and come along for the ride.
Welcome back to another episode of Wildlife Outdoors. I'm Russell, and today we're diving into one of the most important conservation battles in the country. Our guest, Ingrid Lyons, is the Executive Director of Northeastern Minnesotans for Wilderness and a leading voice in the fight to protect the Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness. Ingrid now leads the campaign to save the Boundary Waters, working to stop sulfide ore copper mining and ensure clean water and wilderness access for future generations. Today, we're talking about what's at stake, why the boundary waters matter, and how science, policy, and grassroots advocacy all collide in this fight. Ingrid, welcome to Wildlife Outdoors.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, self-admittedly, I don't know too much about what's going on, but as we were talking before we started recording, you said that you've been a part of this fight for 10 years now. So I'm excited to have you on, and hopefully you can answer some questions that me and some of our listeners have. So I guess just to start it off, could we talk more about like what exactly is going on with boundary waters and the legislative fights that we're facing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the boundary waters is a world-renowned landscape that we are so lucky to have, not only in Minnesota, but in the Midwest and the United States. It's a real treasure of a parcel of public lands. And it is one of the most contentious landscapes, wilderness areas that exists in our country. It was set aside. The forest that the Boundary Waters is in is called the Superior National Forest, and it was set aside in 1909 by Teddy Roosevelt. I mean, it's been acknowledged as a really important and special and unique place for a very long time, but along with that has been the drive to develop it, the drive to log it, the drive to mine it. So we've seen that over the course of the last over 100 years, and the latest legislative threat has been really centered on sulfide ore copper mining, which is what my organization works on pretty much exclusively. There has never been copper mining in the state of Minnesota. It is a uniquely toxic industry. We like to call it specifically sulfide ore copper mining because that, to me, is an important indicator of why it's so toxic. It has sulfides in the rock that contains the copper, and so when you expose it to air and water, you get sulfuric acid,
Oh, wow.
which leaches out heavy metals from this ore body.
Mhm.
So it has a terrible, terrible track record of polluting, even in arid environments where this type of mining is typically done. And so what we're seeing on the legislative front is an attempt to overturn protections that were put in place for the watershed against copper mining back in 2023. So in 2023, there was something called a public land order, or a mineral withdrawal, that was put into place that basically took all the public lands and minerals in the watershed of the boundary waters, so technically outside of the wilderness, but immediately upstream, took that out of the federal mineral development program, meaning that a company couldn't come in and grab a lease and start building a mine. Um, and so those protections are meant to last for 20 years, but we're seeing some unprecedented attempts in Congress to overturn those protections. And we've been seeing them, frankly, all for the course of the past year, but now we're looking down the barrel of a potential floor vote as soon as Wednesday, January 21st. So
Oh, wow.
We're busy out here in DC.
I would say so. So, as I was looking into it, I guess Congressional Review Act is what they're trying to do, which previously, like historically, has never been done for a public land order, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, the Congressional Review Act is a seldom used, very specific law that was passed in the mid 90s that was really meant to provide this narrow window for Congress to overturn or challenge rules, agency rules, which go through a very specific process. When a federal agency wants to create a new rule, it has very, very distinct steps it has to take, including at the end of creating that rule, they publish it in the congressional record. If a rule is published in the congressional record, the Congressional Review Act allows a member of Congress to introduce a joint resolution of disapproval, basically saying, hey, I don't like this rule, or, we don't like this rule. Um, and that then starts a clock where basically they get a fast tracked legislative opportunity to overturn this rule, by which I mean it's only subject to a simple majority. So you only need, 51 votes in the Senate and however many votes in the House. Um, and it's not subject to the Senate filibuster.
I see.
And those rules kind of last for about 60 days. They have 60 days to work to pass this joint resolution of disapproval under these special rules, if they want the rule to be overturned. Uh, and so a public lands order has never been determined to be a rule
Mhm.
that the CRA would apply to. So we're seeing a completely novel application of this law to this type of administrative action. It's kind of wonky.
Yeah, like what grounds do they have to invoke the CRA?
That's a great question. I mean, that's kind of it, right? Like, um, they don't. I think part of it is the definition of a rule, as in terms of like what applies under the CRA, could be broader, could be interpreted as something broader than it has been used in the past. There is a body called the Government Accountability Office, or GAO, that historically has helped guide Congress in terms of saying, hey, actually, this is not a rule under the definition for this law. And then once they provide that opinion, typically Congress, listens to their authority. They're the arbiter of these decisions, and they don't challenge it because they can't. Um, we're seeing folks completely skip that step.
Really?
So not even trying to have it sort of relitigated to count as a rule, but just doing it. I mean, that's the wild part about kind of where we are right now, is that precedent and procedure and history is kind of out the window in a way that feels very it's tough because it sets really dangerous precedents for a lot of other places beyond the boundary waters. Just because you want to apply something to one place to achieve one end, which in this case is advancing a Chilean mining company's
Yeah.
copper mining project, like it sets up a lot of public lands to be at pretty significant risk from this type of action in the future.
Yeah, and going further into that point, that's one thing that I don't understand. Like, it almost seems like they're trying to push this narrative, like, "Oh, this is going to be great. It's going to create American jobs. It's going to, we're going to be able to keep these things here in the U.S." But the company is owned by a Chilean company, and then there's other operations that are within the region that are owned by, I think, like Swiss companies and things of that nature. Like, none of it, like just because what is it, Twin Metals or whatever is out of Minnesota, doesn't mean that everything's going to stay here in the US. And so I don't understand, like there's not anything like being completely clear that the minerals are going to be staying within the US. And that's a big talking point for me, is like, okay, well, you're saying it's going to benefit our country, but show me how it's going to do that. And
Right.
I
And
mean,
yeah,
it's going to be detrimental ecologically in the area. How is it going to benefit us? And
right.
I'm not talking about just regionally. If it's going to benefit the federal government, or us as the constituents, the government as a whole, that's fine. Just tell me how. And it seems like there's no clear path to show how we're going to benefit from it. It's just going to be detrimental.
Right. And I mean, I think that's so important, is in an age of I just think there's a lot of information flying around, and it's hard to
Mhm.
know what's real and what isn't. And so when you see folks who are advocating for this mine say, yeah, we need American jobs, we need a domestic supply of copper, we need copper that comes from the US and stays in the US. And that's why it's worth risking this place, because we need the mineral, and we want to be domestically strong on our base of this mineral. It's so you just that argument can be peeled back like an onion. To your point, Twin Metals LLC is owned by a Chilean mining conglomerate called Antofagasta, which doesn't have any other projects in the United States, but has a lot of projects in Chile, where they've had very bad human rights and environmental records. The company historically, everything that it mines, all the minerals that it gets from its projects, it ships all of that material to China for
Wow.
processing and smelting. Then China sells it back on the world market. So if we follow what's been done historically, and we've not been told anything otherwise, to your point, no one's explained to us how this is going to be directly beneficial to the American people. What's going to happen is that Twin Metals is going to mine a massive area immediately upstream of one of the sort of most unique ecological treasures of our country, which altogether with surrounding ecosystems is over 4 million acres of freshwater boreal forests, incredible hunting opportunities, incredible fisheries, incredible recreation. It's going to pollute that with something called acid mine drainage, which is basically sulfuric acid and heavy metals that kills everything. Then the metals that they got through that process, they're just going to ship to China, and then we're going to buy them back. So not only do we not have the minerals staying at home, we've now also lost the boundary waters.
Yeah.
We've also lost this public lands treasure. And the way that they're trying to do that right now in Congress by using the Congressional Review Act would theoretically mean that other special places that are protected by public land orders would have the exact same thing done to them. That's the kicker, right? Like, what are we sacrificing? What are we trading here?
Yeah.
It's just a loss for the American people writ large.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on a few things there that I want to dig into each one of them. I guess the first one's being you mentioned earlier how research has been done in more of the arid climate where they typically do sulfide ore mining. So it is significantly worse in areas where they're at headwaters because it leaches into the water essentially. And I guess that's one of the things that they're trying to stand on is saying, oh, well, the withdrawal was procedurally flawed because, there was never studies done. Well, that's because typically it's not done in this type of climate, in this type of region, right? And so they're trying to use that saying, oh, it was flawed, so we can't use your research. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, so there's 2 points in there that I would tease out. One is there is an argument right now that the process was flawed in terms of how the protections were put in place procedurally in Congress.
I
So
see.
there's this false argument being made that, okay, when the public land order was signed, it Congress didn't get the proper notification in the congressional record, ergo, it was done wrong and we can redo it now. That's not true at all. And actually, some of the specific members who are talking about not getting congressional, you know, not having this action reported to them, there are letters penned to them specifically telling them about this public land order. And also, because public land orders have never been subject to the rules of the Congressional Review Act, it wasn't done subject to the rules of the Congressional Review Act. It was completed um, under the very specific rules of the statute that governs public land orders, which is called the Federal Land Policy and Management Act, or
Uh-huh.
FLIPMA, of 1976. And they followed that law to the T. So it's a funny circular argument to be like, it's flawed because I am now saying it's subject to this law that it's never been subject to, including when it was submitted, ergo, it's flawed. It's a
Yeah.
very, so there's that part of it. The second part of it is also this kind of funny, it's never been studied thing. Some people make the argument that the company should have the opportunity to submit a mine plan for review before it's determined whether or not a place is appropriate for a certain industry or not. The fact of the matter is that a federal agency can begin a process to basically take a step back and understand, hey, is this type of ecosystem, this extremely, extremely wet ecosystem that's built essentially on freshwater and snowmelt and rain, is this the right place for an industry that we know has some real problems with affecting water quality no matter where it's done, even
Mhm.
if it's done in the desert? And so what happened was that a study was started under a process that's very specifically governed. The Forest Service completed that study after years of research and analysis, included an economic study, cultural reports, ecological reports, wildlife reports. I mean, it was an extremely robust um, research that was conducted on very specifically this landscape and this industry. Does this make sense? In addition to that, as part of that process, there were public comment periods because another very critical thing that we are missing in sometimes these conversations is what's critical to public lands is that they belong to all Americans,
Yeah.
which means every single person should have the opportunity to say, hey, I actually really don't like what you're doing, or hey, that's great. That's a great idea. I super applaud what you're up to.
Yeah.
Um, and 675,000 Americans commented over the period, over the very many opportunities that existed in that review period. So it is through that whole process, it was abundantly clear that this place was not the right place for this type of mining across lots and lots of different analysis areas. And so that's why they put the public land order in place. The public land order is arguably, basically as researched a decision as you can possibly have. And to folks who kind of think, well, they shouldn't have taken it off the map without considering a specific mine plan. Unfortunately, history tells us that mine plans and permits that are submitted by companies vastly underestimate their impact on a landscape. Because
Yeah.
if you want to develop a for profit project in an area, you're not going to say, oh, yeah, by the way, I'm going to completely destroy your watershed.
Yeah.
I'm going to increase mercury levels by 200%. That's not what companies do. And so there are studies out there that actually compare, what a company says they're going to do to the actual reality after that mine has opened. And in basically all cases, the pollution is way higher than what was projected by the company when they got permitted. So I think it's really good governance to take a step back and say, before all these companies invest all this money in mining this place, let's ask ourselves if this place is even the right place to do this type of thing.
Yeah.
That was a long answer, but
Well,
there you
no,
go.
that completely answers it because, you know, if the studies have been done and whether they've been published or not, if they have data on why it's not a good idea, and then there's been an additional public comment period, and I mean, to me, it seems like a resounding no. Everybody's like, no, this doesn't make sense. So then
And it's
now,
all public.
yeah,
You could read the whole thing and it's hundreds of, I mean, it is a thick, thick thing, but it's available. It exists. All of the research is out there.
I see. And now they're trying to go kind of backwards and backdoor and trying to, quickly push it through and get it done. And I mean, unfortunately, that's just the way that our government seems to operate. And me personally, I don't think lobbying should be a thing. But, the way things are working, it's like, well, who was lobbied on this? Or probably easier to answer who wasn't. So it's horrible. But So we dug into that. The other thing that you kind of briefly touched on was talking about outdoor recreation, and if they want to talk about the benefits, oh well, it's going to benefit the U.S. Well, what about the hundreds of millions of dollars that we get? Data shows that the Boundary Waters region supports a long-term economic activity through tourism, guiding, outdoor recreation, and if you're going to be doing mining, that's more of like a boom and bust extraction. So, should public land decisions favor long-term distribution economies over short-term investments? And how do we honestly value what clean water and intact ecosystems are worth?
Holy cow. I'm sure there's like several theses. Some student somewhere has written some long papers about those questions. Yeah, I mean, it feels somewhat obvious, I think, if you have a sense for what you're offering or taking away from a future generation.
Mhm.
Um, I recognize that jobs are significant and good paying jobs are important and union jobs are important. Um, and for the people who hold those jobs, that's hugely significant. Um, and also, I think outdoor recreation supports a ton of jobs,
It does.
far more than this mine is projected to provide for the local community.
Yeah.
I mean, in Minnesota, to give folks a sense, like there's so much of our outdoor culture that's driven on sort of this concept of lake country. You are up north and you're in the forest and you're on lakes, and a big anchor of that is the Boundary Waters. I mean, the Boundary Waters is really smack dab in northeastern Minnesota, and um, it drives a tremendously large outdoor recreation based economy, outdoor amenity based economy, and how awesome that as long as the wilderness is usable and clean and safe, you could have that economic model forever. It was so interesting during COVID when people felt trapped at home. Their answer to like connecting and having fun and like forgetting about the pandemic was to go outdoors. The Boundary Waters, that was the highest visitation year kind of ever. So when you talk about what's recession proof, what's disease proof, outbreak
Yeah.
proof, I don't know. Um, it's like a very strong economic model if
Mhm.
we invest in it properly as well. Like I understand also the difference between like a union job, and not all tourism jobs are particularly high paying. I mean,
Yeah.
I know that, I recognize that, but I think that it is really wise of states and countries to invest in their outdoor recreation economies because it really supports long-term economic gain and growth. It attracts people to areas not just for an industry, but for a place. I mean, the number of people who live or have moved to wilderness edge communities is huge. And, they want to live there because of that special place. They want to be near the wilderness. They want to be, in a wilderness edge community. And so you're totally right. And Minnesota actually is one of the fastest growing outdoor recreation economies in the country. Um, right now, I think outdoor rec brings in something like $13.5 billion a year in
Oh,
terms of
wow.
revenue for the state. And extractive industries are somewhere in the like 2 billion range.
Wow.
Um, so it's something that, it's not worth scoffing at. It's a serious economic engine for our state, for the region, and for the thousands of people who have jobs in that industry compared to
Yeah.
the small hundreds that would have jobs if and when this one copper mine was developed, which
Yeah.
would make moot generations of outdoor recreation jobs, right?
Yeah. Not only outdoor recreation jobs, but outdoor recreation and bringing people there. You got to think about the local
Yeah.
tourism. One of my best friends growing up lives in Iowa now, and he goes to Boundary Waters every year, multiple times a year. And he was down here
Heck
in
yeah.
Arkansas where I'm at last April, and we were talking about it. He's like, dude, you got to come up here. Like, he was showing me pictures and telling me about it. And I have yet to go, but like, it's just intriguing. And I absolutely, I think we're planning a trip here in 2026 to go together. But it's one of those
Yay.
things where it's like people congregate there, and they cross straight state lines to do that, and that also helps out with the local economy there. So this mine that is going to benefit China and a Chilean company doesn't deserve to be benefited more than the constituents of our government and our local Americans, So,
Totally.
to me, it seems completely, it's obvious,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's why I'm in it too, is it feels obvious enough to me. And yeah, I love hearing about your friend from Iowa. It's really quite incredible. Like, I think sometimes people are like, okay, that's a Minnesota issue. I'm not going to get involved. And I hear this in Washington, D.C. a fair amount where offices are just like, what am I supposed to do about this like local issue? And the fact of the matter is, and I think that this, to bring it back to this legislative threat that we're facing, this moment really demonstrates why this is actually a national conversation.
Yeah.
Not only is the Boundary Waters a national wilderness area, so a parcel of American public lands belongs to everyone, doesn't belong to me as a Minnesotan more than you as an Arkansan? Ar-
Arkansan.
Arkansan? Or an Iowan or whatever.
Mhm.
It's also the most visited wilderness area in America, with over 150,000 people going to the Boundary Waters every single year,
Oh, wow.
to do and all year. Yes, there's paddling season, but there's hunting season, there's fishing opener. The winters are incredible. The
I
dog
was just about to
sledding, the
ask about
winter
that. Yeah.
camping. It is wild. It's not like anything. The high in the wilderness edge town of Ely next Saturday is -13.
Oh, wow.
So you gotta come prepared. But it's quite a trip. Literally, it's
Yeah.
America's most visited wilderness, a hugely important parcel of American public lands, and it's in the middle of the country in a place where there actually aren't that many parcels of public lands, and there aren't
Mhm.
that many big wilderness areas. And so it is folks getting in their car in Des Moines, strapping their crappy canoe to the top, with a couple bags of ramen and like a 24 pack and a fishing rod, and like in 7 hours they're in the Boundary Waters or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's accessible. It's kind of like very Americana. It's very iconic. It's kind of the wilderness of the people in a lot of ways. It's just a super accessible place for folks to recreate and experience the outdoors in some really, really incredible and impactful ways.
It seems like it, and it seems like, like you said, year-round recreation. There's not very many places in the country where that's as easily accessible and as comfortable to do. Like you said, you gotta prepare, if the high is -13, but
I don't know how
the
comfortable that is.
if you're going to do winter recreation, that's what you would expect, especially in that part of the country. Me, I'm from Alaska originally. I think it's in my
Hell
blood.
yeah.
I love the cold. I lived in Texas for 18 years though, so I also love the hot. But
Sure.
there's like thinking about, Texas. Okay, so there's the Devil's River. It gets extremely hot. You can only float at certain times of the year because water levels. You don't want to float it in the winter, really. Water levels probably ain't going to be the best. Dead of summer, it's going to be 115 degrees. So, like, you just can't really recreate out there all year long. So, just thinking about that in contrast to the Boundary Waters, to where you can literally go do anything any time of year. Just be prepared for what your activities are going to be based on the season. That's a huge thing. And like you mentioned, it's Americans' land. It is public lands. We all, quote unquote, own it. It's our lands to do as we see fit and go out there and recreate and enjoy it. And the fact that that could possibly be tainted for the benefit of a foreign nation is just, it just boggles my mind why anybody would think that that would be a good idea.
Yeah, and that's what we're working on, day in and day out, is just trying to figure out how to communicate those things, because some people care and some people's minds can be changed, and some people are really bought into a company, a project, an industry. And so we're going to do everything we can to make this vote, go our way. And if we're not successful, your audience will have lots and lots and lots of opportunities, I'm sure, to continue to plug into the fight if they're excited about it. Please do come to the Boundary Waters. Let me know when you're up there. We have a partner organization called Sportsmen for the Boundary Waters, and they take a lot of podcasters and media folks out
Oh,
on
good.
hunts and different things and have a great time. So there's a lot of fun opportunities up there, and we'd love to get you and your buddies up to experience it whatever time of year you decide, whether it's dog sledding and ice fishing or
That would be awesome. Ice fishing is
paddling and
something that I've
swimming.
always wanted to try.
It's
That
fun. It's fun, and it's quite you can really get the heated tents that they have, you can get them pretty hot. It's kind of more like a sauna, and then you're just sitting
really.
around a hole, which is kind of fun. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to talk about the history. So you said that you've been a part of this fight for, a decade now, and I didn't realize this has been a thing that's been ongoing. And so I have a few notes here. The first note that I have says in 2016 the federal government first proposed a 20-year mining moratorium in the watershed in response to growing concern about the proposed copper nickel sulfide mining. So can you talk a little bit about the past and how it's changed as the years go by, leading up to the fights that we're fighting now?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, we our organization was founded by a small group of Wilderness Edge residents who basically in like 2012 realized that there were federal mineral leases in the watershed and that a company was renewing or applying to renew them with the federal government. And you know, were kind of shocked and horrified to learn about this company, about this potential project, and really just set about how do we convince the federal government that this is not the right place to do this. Um, and so when we talk about Save the Boundary Waters being a grassroots movement, it really is. I mean, it really was started from the ground up. It was started from people in wilderness edge communities, spread to the region, spread to the state. Um, we did kind of funny, crazy things to just kind of try to get it on a national radar. Like we knew that there were people across the country who cared about the boundary waters, but it wasn't so much I would say now it's one of the top 3 public lands fights of especially this and last year. And I'm biased, so I'd say earlier than that too. But in terms of public consciousness, in terms of sort of associating the name Boundary Waters with like a public lands issue that's at hand. But like there's a couple who lived in the Boundary Waters for a full year, for 365 days. They never left the wilderness. That was one, and we had media come in and resupply them and interview
That's
them. And
awesome.
so we did all these kind of crazy media tactics and things. We had actually the same couple paddled from Ely, Minnesota, which is the community at the edge of the Boundary Waters, sort of the gateway community. They paddled from Ely to Washington, D.C.,
Oh, wow.
and they collected signatures on a canoe and then gave the canoe to the chief of the Forest Service
That's awesome.
in Washington, D.C. So, we started out really just trying to be like, we got to get loud. We have
Yeah.
an opportunity to um, kind of nip this in the bud. And
Mhm.
we did have success. And, this is where it gets, I think, a little political, mostly in so much as, well, for one, it's just sort of become an unfortunately political issue.
Yeah.
And the best way to sort of describe the back and forth is unfortunately like kind of between presidential administrations.
Yeah.
Um, Polling in Minnesota demonstrates that 70% of Minnesotans want to see the boundary waters permanently protected, and that crosses all kinds of lines, political lines, partisan divides, other demographics. Like, doesn't matter who you are, people want the boundary waters protected.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who you vote for, people want the boundary waters protected.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the people who represent the people have really put it into this sort of like quote unquote black and white. It's either a Republican issue or a Democratic issue, but that's not, as we've learned from all the pushback on the public land sale in particular, like that's just not true.
Yeah.
It's not partisan. It's for everyone, it's by everybody, it includes everybody. Um and so, we got the administration at the end of the Obama administration, they started this process to evaluate after we made lots and lots and lots of noise and started our coalition and worked with sporting groups and worked with national groups to just basically raise hell. Um, we got the process started that led to that study that I was
I see.
describing earlier. Um, Unfortunately, in 2017, under the first Trump administration, that study was canceled,
Really?
and it was not released. Um, and the company was actually given its leases back, quote unquote. Its leases had not been renewed. Its leases had been canceled um, because they were starting this process. So the Trump administration gave those leases back. Um, there was this funny kind of issue that we called Mansion Gate at the time, where shortly after President Trump won his first election, the patriarch of the family that owns Antofagasta purchased a mansion in Washington, D.C. And a few months later, he was renting it to Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump.
Oh, wow.
So we called that Mansion Gates,
Yeah.
and because it was sort of like, what are the connections here? What's
Yeah.
going on here? So we really tried to like buckle up for kind of a rough road for the things that we had accomplished in 2016. And indeed, the study was quashed. The company was favored. And so that was a hard period of time. Our goal was really to get this withdrawal in place, this 20-year mineral withdrawal, because, we thought 20 years could really give us some great padding to pass a permanent protection bill.
Yeah.
Legislation that would take hard rock mining out of the watershed of the Boundary Waters forever. That is our goal as an organization, is permanent protection of the watershed of the Boundary Waters.
Yeah.
And so that was a bit of a tough period. And then, the study got kicked back up, and we went ahead with the study again under Biden, early Biden. So again, it's sort of this like back and forth on administrations, but administrations also have different priorities. So it's not always necessarily the political leanings, but we had a pretty hard time under Trump 1. And then with Biden, the study was able to be completed in its full capacity and form. The 20-year mineral withdrawal was signed in January of 2023, on January 26th. So we're getting pretty close to the anniversary. And so we have about 17 years left in our public land order, assuming that it doesn't get overturned in this Congress, which there have already been multiple attempts to overturn it. So how it's changed over time, I think unfortunately it's become more entrenched in this sort of political football framework, because we've seen the return of a president who has prioritized extractive industries and has had sort of a bright spot for this particular company and project. And so that's unfortunate. That's really harmed us, I think, because it sort of defines the issue along political lines when really it shouldn't. And so I was really happy to see the reaction to the public lands sell-off attempts this summer by Senator Mike Lee, because it just reminded everybody that like everybody loves public lands, actually.
Absolutely.
It's not, so.
Yeah,
it's been a wild ride.
It seems like it has, and it's one of those things to where, majority of our listeners are probably on the conservative side of things. I have had conversations with quite a few people that seem to be more liberal, but all of these public land sell-offs, everybody comes together. It doesn't matter what side of the aisle they're from. It doesn't matter how they were raised. It doesn't it's across the board. Nobody wants these public lands to be sold off. It seems like the only ones that want the lands to be sold off are the people that are gonna benefit financially from it. And it seems like they're trying to find every way to kind of, do it behind the curtain or find different ways to where they can avoid NEPA or FLIPMA. And it just doesn't make sense. And then they want to try to pitch it to the people like, oh, this is going to be great for you. It's going to be great for the economy. We're going to, work on the national deficit. And just thinking about it in the grand scheme of things, the money that they're going to quote unquote make from this isn't going to even put a dent in our national deficit. And all these ways they're trying to pitch this to the American people, I see right through them. And it's a breath of fresh air to see people across the aisle coming together and be like, hey, come on, cut it out. We obviously see what's going on here. But they're still trying to find every other way to kind of get it done behind the curtain. And I think it's just time for people to stand up and take action. And, that's kind of what my purpose on having you on is. I want to get the word out there. Like, we're angry about this, and we're not going to sit here and be quiet and just let shit happen. Like, we got to get it out there. We have to tell people what exactly is going on, tell them the facts. Facts don't care about feelings. We have both sides of the party to try to use that. This is what it is. Facts don't care about feelings. So these are our lands. These are our public lands, and they belong to us. And we're not going to sell them off to a foreign company that's going to take the minerals and send them off to China and sell them back to us. Nobody's going to benefit from that. all we're going to do is lose these amazing places that this country has to give us. And that's one thing that makes America unique, is we have these public lands. It doesn't exist throughout the
Yeah.
world,
It's
and that's
America's
something that
best
we have.
idea.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's uniquely American. It is
it is.
uniquely American. Public lands make America great.
Yeah,
Public lands are such a gift to the American people, and they're
yeah,
a right. They're our shared national trust.
absolutely.
Um, and so it's they're the people's lands. And so
Yeah,
we should be able to help dictate or just straight up dictate how they're managed and given away.
yeah,
That's the other thing. It's not it like you said it, there's no benefit. It's just giving something away that is ours.
yeah.
And that's
That's
not right.
exactly what it is. Giving it away, ruining it, and selling it, and taking it away from future generations. Like, I have young daughters, and I want them to be able to enjoy these things. But the way things are starting to look, it almost seems like they're trying to take that away from them. Just being a parent, like, I'm more protective over them than I am myself, and it pisses me off they're trying to take that away from my kids.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's the amount of stories I've heard about multi-generational families having, traditions in wild places and on
Uh,
public lands. And the idea that that can just get, the rug can just get taken out from under them because what we care about lining the pockets of a Chilean billionaire.
right.
That doesn't track for me.
No, same. And it's like, I can't even imagine how many of the politicians are getting their pockets padded. You know, all it takes is a company to come in and say, hey, we're going to make $500 billion profit on this, and yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll give you this car, we'll give you $1 million, we'll give you $10 million. And lobbying is just something that should not be able to be done by the people that are voted in by us, and we don't benefit from those things. I don't see how somebody has a salary of $180,000 a year, but after 5 years in office becomes a multimillionaire. It's ridiculous. And so many people just have the wool over their eyes and don't want to see the truth on it. And you have all these mega corporations that are going and, padding people's pockets to get decisions made that are going to benefit them, that doesn't benefit the constituents of the government.
Yeah, there's a lot happening that we're not involved in. And last time I checked, the Capitol was the people's
Yeah.
house. So it should be us in there, not
Yeah.
foreign
Absolutely.
mining companies
It
and
is.
people who
It
actually
is
represent our
very
interests. I mean,
unfortunate.
that's the other thing. Yeah, it is
Mm,
unfortunate, but
absolutely.
you know, you got to find the thing that you're passionate about, and you got to raise heck. I mean, I think that's part of it. Is like I think sometimes people feel super powerless. It's a big system that exists and runs our country, but like I am constantly I really enjoy coming to Washington, and I really enjoy connecting with people in these offices because then it helps you remember that they're just people, and you can
Mhm.
have conversations, and maybe you don't see eye to eye on on everything, but you know, um, it really just makes you remember that like it's a human to human conversation, and also like when people push back, like the public land sale, like the public stopped that.
Yeah.
People stood up, said, "I give a damn about this, and I'm not gonna let it happen," and guess what? It didn't happen. Like,
Yeah.
that's power. That's
Yeah.
power. So people are not powerless. Like, you find your thing and you raise a stink.
Absolutely.
You have the power.
Yeah. So that kind of like leads into my next question is, what can the everyday person do? Who can they reach out to? What's the process on public comment? Like, even if there's not a formal public comment, what can people do to help?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, um, there's not a formal public comment period right now, but what there is an impending vote. But we are expecting a vote as soon as Wednesday of this week. And what is absolutely critical is that members of Congress from across the country hear from their constituents. So if you care, you just look up, who's my representative, call the number and say, hey, don't sell the boundary waters down the river. And we have lots and lots of action resources. So we're at savetheboundarywaters.org. Our partner organization, Sportsmen for the Boundary Waters, also has tons of resources. They make it super easy to send a message to Congress. But the other thing is, like, if you have buddies you like to hunt and fish and camp with, if you go to the Boundary Waters with people, like, spread the word that the Boundary Waters is at risk and that people are actively trying to destroy it by building a massive copper mine on its doorstep. Because that's the thing is like grassroots power is super significant, and we just need to make sure that people are aware of it. Because I think a lot of people care. A lot of people care about the outdoors. A lot of people care about the Boundary Waters, and they have no idea what's going on. So
Yeah.
spread the word. You can take action on our website. Um, Call your member of Congress and tell them to stand up and protect the Boundary Waters because that's what the
Yeah.
people want.
Absolutely. And, it's one of those things to where, we saw success with backcountry hunters and anglers that was speaking a lot on the possible resistance to the roadless rule, like flood the lines, call your
Yeah.
representative and say, hey, look, this is what nobody wants. Call them up, send an email, and I'll make sure I put the links to your organization and your sister organization's websites. That way people can go there for resources. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be my call to action to all the listeners is get out there, send emails, phone calls, do what you can, be loud about it because we're not going to just let this happen.
Yeah. Hell no. And that's what we say. We say, speak loudly for this quiet place.
Yeah, I love that. So, but thank you so much for your time and coming on and answering some of the hard hitting questions. I know there's a lot of people that don't know about this. And so my goal is to get this out there, and I'm probably going to stay up tonight and finish editing this and try to get it out first thing tomorrow. And
Amazing.
yeah, thank you so much for your time and answering the questions. And those of y'all that are watching to the end, I appreciate it. We'll catch y'all next time.
This has been Wildlife Outdoors. Thanks for listening. Follow us on Facebook at Wildlife Outdoors and on Instagram at wild.life.outdoors. Let's go live life on the wild side.